And I was kind of in and out of the birth pool. Like initially I'd planned to birth in the water, and then I got in the water and I was like, absolutely not.
Get me
out. Like I'm a Virgo. I am an earth sign. I need my feet on the ground.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to No Place Like Home. I am your host Larissa, and today I'm with the beautiful Claire. Now, Claire, you've co-hosted with me
I have
before. Yeah, the absolute pleasure. But today we're going to talk about you,
Okay.
and your journey. For everyone who doesn't know you, maybe let's just talk a bit about yourself.
Yep.
Who you are, your quals, because in this day and age, that matters.
Yes.
Tell us a bit about yourself.
So I'm a naturopath and full spectrum doula, and I'm a mum of 2 little girls. I have an 8-year-old Lottie and a 4-year-old Marigold.
Beautiful. My God, those girls are just sunshine. Background in terms of, you've got quite an interesting background in terms of your naturopathy.
Yeah. So I studied naturopathy and I graduated in 2012 and I went kind of straight into corporate from uni and then went into sales after that. So I didn't go into clinical practice immediately, but I kind of always worked with people in clinical practice. Yeah. Because I was working, for a kind of wholesale distributor directly to naturopaths in clinic. So I was kind of in a sales/education role in that perspective, which kind of suited me because I really enjoyed that kind of, like helping people work through their own cases, problem-solving things with them, that sort of thing. I did that for a number of years before I went on mat leave. And then, post having Lottie was when I studied my doula training. And then I kind of went into clinical practice after having kids because it was a bit more flexible and, kind of afforded me the luxury of being able to work from home. And I already had, all of the kind of connections and background.
Okay. So we're going to get to these beautiful pregnancies and children.
Yes.
But for those that don't know, when we talk about full spectrum doula, do you just want to break that down?
Yeah. So I guess a full spectrum doula is someone who works with people across the spectrum of pregnancy, birth and postpartum and everything that kind of comes with that. So everything from kind of pregnancy loss to termination, IVF, fertility issues and, kind of supporting people at all varying stages of that process.
What so you did naturopathy first and nutrition. Yeah. And then at what point did you decide that you wanted to be a doula?
After I had Lottie, and I'm, I guess, quite a type A personality. And when I decided that I wanted to become pregnant, I did a lot of research and knowing that it was going to kind of be, I guess, a non-conventional process to get pregnant, being queer, I had to, do a lot of reading and I really wanted to make sure, like, if I'm going to do pregnancy, I'm going to do it, by the book. I'm going to get it right and I'm going to be well-nourished and I'm going to be acupunctured and I'm going to do all of the things to have the most perfect pregnancy. And, and then the same with birth. Like I'd done a lot of reading and a lot of research and decided very early on before I was even pregnant that I wanted to have a home birth. And it was after having Lottie and having that experience of home birth and just feeling so educated and kind of supported and empowered through that process, I thought, I want everyone to experience this and I want to support people to feel as kind of knowledgeable as they can because I truly believe that knowledge is power in that kind of space. So
absolutely.
I just thought, and people only know what they know.
Yeah. So you were certainly in the space when you decided to start a family.
Yes.
What planning and preparation So I suppose this is like a bigger conversation, but let's launch into your journey into pregnancy. So, as you mentioned, you're queer, your pronouns are they, them.
Yes. But
at the time that you decided to have children, you were in a same gender relationship.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, I was married to my now ex-wife, and we decided that we wanted to have a baby. I was kind of in two minds about whether or not I wanted to carry a pregnancy myself. It hadn't always – I wasn't one of those people that grew up always wanting to have babies, and I think I never really gave it much thought or time, and it was really only after lots of conversations that we decided, actually maybe I do. And I was slightly older, and the timing worked better for me where I was in my career and that sort of thing to have, I guess, a little break. And so then we started looking into our options for fertility and how we would get pregnant, and a good friend actually offered to be our sperm donor. So we went down that road with him as a known donor, and I fell pregnant very easily. So I was very lucky in that regard. We didn't have to go through IVF or anything. We just did a home insemination process, and I fell pregnant on the first try. I think it was all the acupuncture and
all the goodness,
all the yoga and
all the all
the type A things that I did in the lead up. But for whatever reason, we were very lucky in that regard.
How amazing. How was your pregnancy?
I've pretty much had symptoms from the minute that I fell pregnant. I didn't want to lean into it initially, but once kind of 6 weeks rolled around, I was so sick. And I was working on the road as a sales rep at the time, and it became just token for me to have a Tupperware container in the car with me because I was that sick. Like it was awful. And at the time, I didn't really know anything about hyperemesis or that this was outside of the realm of normal. But, I had nausea and vomiting up until about 25 weeks every day.
Wow.
Yeah, unrelenting. So I remember sitting in meetings, in a cafe, and like the smell of coffee or the smell of eggs or things like that would just be like, oh, this is awful. And, so it did eventually pass, but, it was a lot of mashed potato, white boiled rice, craving something and then being served it and thinking,
get it away
from me. You're trying to poison me. Or like having to shove towels under the door so that I couldn't smell the food cooking, because if I could smell it, then I wouldn't be able to eat it. It was awful.
It's so interesting the way that the body, like, don't smell it, but just put it in front of me quickly so I can
I can't look at it. Don't ask me if I'm enjoying it, because I'm not. And don't expect me to be like, thank you for feeding me, because this is just food.
I'm just doing this for survival, kind of.
Yeah.
So you got to 25 weeks and then it kind of
subsided. And the remainder of the pregnancy was pretty good. I had a little bit of like body aches and things like that as I got bigger, but it wasn't until I hit about 36 weeks that I got some sciatica. And that was really, really painful. I hadn't really ever experienced back pain or anything like that in my life. So it was, pretty crippling.
I got that second time round with Sebi.
Just down one side of my leg, and I was like hobbling around and trying to do was like keep active.
Yeah, but it hurts to keep active because you can't sit, you can't stand, you can't lay.
It was awful. Yeah. And I had a big dog and I had to walk her twice a day, and I was doing lots of kind of, physical activity, and I was just like, this is awful. When is this gonna end? Just willing the pregnancy to be over by that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you, for anyone out there who is experiencing HG, and I know that we've done a dedicated episode on HG with Yannicka.
Yes.
But how did you support yourself through that time with HG?
With Lottie's pregnancy, I didn't really do much because I felt it was one thing that I didn't really know that much about. Yeah. And it was really only with the wisdom of hindsight that I was able to kind of go, oh, yeah, that was probably more than the average morning sickness. Yeah. Second time around, I was a little bit more prepared. And, yeah, it had come into my sphere and I understood a bit more about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And knowing you would have done a lot of reading and a lot of everything. Did you plan for the birth?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. I'd done a lot of reading. I'd listened to a lot of podcasts. I'd done every kind of calm birth, hypnobirth course. I'd sought out a private midwife by this point and decided that, I was going to have a home birth and what that was going to look like, who was going to be there.
Yeah.
And was feeling really confident with, progressing with that. Wasn't that well received by kind of family, being, my first birth, my first experience of birth, and a lot of people kind of being like, are you sure for your first you want to have them at home?
In a hospital.
Maybe for second or third birth, like if it's easy, then you could do it at home, but like this first birth at home business feels a bit risky. But I kind of tuned that out. I knew that I was well, and I knew that for me, it was multi-pronged, I guess, the reason why I wanted to birth at home. It was in part I didn't feel sick and I didn't feel the need to be in hospital. There was no part of me that thought, this is a pathology that needs to be, scrutinised.
Yeah.
I also really connected with that continuity of care model, having my midwife from kind of 20 weeks all the way through until postpartum just felt really safe for me.
And essentially it's the same thing, just a different environment.
Exactly.
Right?
Absolutely.
It's like you've got a midwife there.
Yeah. And she had oxygen. She had, drugs for if there was hemorrhage. I felt really secure in that. And I think also the other layer to it was being a queer person, in a same-sex presenting relationship. I didn't want to have to explain to every shift change, who this person was with me.
Yes.
I didn't want to have to talk about, how we got pregnant or that it wasn't a high risk because it wasn't IVF pregnant. It wasn't an IVF pregnancy. Like there was all these layers to it, and I just thought, just explaining this process once is kind of nice, actually.
Yeah, I completely get that.
Yeah.
Had you supported home births as a doula at that point?
No, I wasn't a doula at that point. I'd never been at a birth. I'd never seen a birth.
Right.
It was all just from books and videos and things.
I love that. I don't know whether anyone knows, but Renee Barge, she is a TV presenter on Channel 9, the Today Show, and she's just had her second child, and she had a home birth.
Yeah.
And I love that she has put home birth on such a huge platform.
Definitely. So mainstream.
Mainstream, and just the way that she has also expressed it, talked about it and promoted it, I think has done hopefully some amazing things for home birth.
Definitely.
Because I think there's this attitude around home birth that it's somewhat for the uneducated.
Definitely. There's a stigma.
It's really hippie to do it and blah, 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 blah. So
definitely.
When I saw that recently, I was like, oh, yes.
So good.
So good.
Yeah.
So good. So did your expectations of that home birth align sort of with what you had in your reality?
Sort of.
Yeah.
It was freaking hard. And my labour was very prolonged. My waters ruptured on the Sunday evening and Lottie wasn't born until the Wednesday night. So I had multiple days of kind of that early prodromal labour where I was just having contractions with nothing progressing, but all at the same time just leaking fluid. And the midwife was like, this is normal. This can be normal as long as it's clear. There's no meconium.
Yeah.
We were monitoring baby, monitoring me. Everything was fine. So we just kind of kept going. But it did get to a point by so I guess by the Wednesday Tuesday evening when she came over and did a CTG and checked everything, she kind of said, look, by tomorrow we really want this baby to be on the way. Otherwise we're going to have to maybe look at, start talking about the potential for antibiotics and things like that, because obviously my membranes were open. There was chance of group B strep. So I had to kind of get my head in the game in that regard, but also was just kind of surrendering to this is going to be what it's going to be at this point. But I did wake up that night and things were progressing. By 6 a.m. the following morning, I was like, all right, we're on. And then, she wasn't born till 10:35 p.m. that night. So it was a long few days. I was very, very exhausted. And, the tail end of getting her out was quite intense. I had no idea, but she was 4.5 kilos. So I'd always been measuring right on track, and I hadn't had any additional scans after 20 weeks, the morphology scan. So I had no idea that she was in the upper, percentiles. She was like 99th percentile.
Love that for us.
So it was great.
Mine were the same.
Yeah, she was a nice hefty size. So it was a lot of effort to get her out, and I did have a tear. Yeah. But it was nothing that couldn't be managed at home. Yeah. And I did, birth her in my bedroom and hop straight into bed, and she initiated feeding, and I didn't have to leave my home. Yeah. I was just home.
Would you say, you just touched on it before, would you say for anyone planning a home birth, you said before, I also surrendered and just had an open mind that this was going to be what it was going to be. Would you say that that's a really important mindset to have for someone who may have to end up going to hospital?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Yeah. I think if you're working with a private midwife, they're very experienced in managing home birth and risk associated with birth in general. That's regardless of the location of it. And, there are certain things regardless of where you're birthing that you do pose a greater risk. And just birthing at home doesn't eliminate those things. So you still have to be open to hearing the advice. And those were conversations, and I felt if I'd been in hospital, there probably would have been less of a conversation. Yeah. It would have been more of a your membranes have been open for 48 hours now.
This is what we're doing.
Your baby's going to get sick. You need to be on antibiotics during your labour. Whereas it was a conversation. I felt fine. My temperature was fine after Lottie was born because I had declined antibiotics during my labour. It was a process of just monitoring her temperature for 48 hours. Yeah, once that 48 hours had passed, and this was every couple of hours we would just check her temperature. Yeah. It was fine. Yeah. And after that 48 hours subsided, we knew that she was clear. There was no infection. There was no meconium. She was fine.
Obviously, well, not obviously, did you feel sort of safe and supported through the process? I know we've kind of touched on it, but again, I think for people thinking about home birth, and I think, that Renee Barge thing has probably added other layers of people's curiosity and probably looking into it a bit more. How were those feelings for you throughout probably the act once you started actively labouring?
I think I definitely felt comfortable because I was in my home. We're able to listen to music. I could go out into my backyard if I wanted to. I could cuddle my cat and my dog. It was very it was intense at times, and it definitely ramped up, and there were those normal kind of wobbles that people get during their labour where they think, actually, this is crazy. I should be in hospital. This is far too intense for me to manage. But everyone I had on my support team kind of anticipated those things and were able to reassure me. It was just me, my midwife, my ex-wife, and we had a videographer there as well. So, and then at one point it did get quite intense, and that sciatic pain got really, really painful in my kind of lower hip. And an acupuncturist was invited to come in and do a body work on me during that labour just to open up my pelvis because I'd kind of gone really tight.
Restricted.
And I felt really restricted in my movement. So she came in, put some pins in me and hung out for maybe another hour. And then it was like, all right, enough of this shit. Like, let's get this baby
just do
out.
this.
Like I'm back and I was ready to go.
How amazing that, you know, just that opportunity for all of those other sensory elements to be able to come into the experience.
Definitely.
Whereas you would never, I don't think, be able to invite an acupuncturist into a labouring suite or your cat or your dog.
Exactly.
And those are really important sensory things for anybody to calm the nervous system, which
and I had a shower and I had a birth pool and I was kind of in and out of the birth pool. Like initially I'd planned to birth in the water and then I got in the water and I was like, absolutely not.
Get me
out. Like I'm a Virgo. I am an earth sign. I need my feet on the ground. And it just felt so, I did not like the weightlessness of that feeling at all. And, that was pretty much the only, like, spanner in the works, really, because I'd had this image of, like, bringing my baby up in the water and I was like, ugh, no, this is awful.
Yeah, so interesting because I'm a water sign as well and my head goes, oh, yeah, no, I reckon I'd be good in water. But then, like, every other part of me is like, no, you would want to feel the ground.
Yeah.
Did you plan for postpartum first time round?
No, I didn't. Other than just putting food in the freezer, zero plan. It was definitely overlooked. I had my midwife for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And she offered great practical support in terms of feeding and, you know, swaddling the baby and checking on us in that regard. But in terms of rest and like really going slow, like once I felt okay in terms of my body and like my healing was all okay, like I was up and doing stuff and I'd go for a walk and then it'd be like, oh, my pelvic floor feels really heavy or I'm really uncomfortable, but didn't really think, well, that's your body saying lay down.
Yeah, too much.
Like I just didn't have that awareness. I was like, oh, you know, I was physically fit. I wanted to keep physically fit. So I was like, I just got to get back moving and back to yoga and really didn't lean into the slow pace of that early postpartum at all.
I don't think you're alone in that.
Yeah.
Claire, by some funny recollection.
Yeah.
Okay, so your postpartum in those early days was a bit clunky.
Yeah, definitely.
And then second pregnancy with Marigold. How was your postpartum with Marigold?
My postpartum with Goldie was it was also quite challenging. I definitely planned for a bit more support postpartum, but it was COVID. Marigold was born in 2020.
Oh.
Yeah,
okay.
so I'd spent my entire pregnancy pretty much in lockdown. Like I conceived Marigold in early April 2020. So,
and that was again through
same donor. Yep, and it was kind of
How
like
beautiful.
We knew that the lockdowns the first lockdown had just been announced and we were unsure how long this process was going to last for, and I had a window of opportunity and we kind of just thought, let's give it one go and see whether or not it happens, and if not, we'll see you on the other side of whatever this crazy time is. And again, I fell pregnant straight away.
And you had a new partner at this stage?
Yes, I repartnered, and we decided to have another baby and and so Hannah and I had planned this and just thought, look, we'll give it one go before the lockdowns are kind of too hectic, and then there I was, locked down and knocked up.
Oh my God. So stay tuned because we're going to get more in depth with this postpartum experience because it was very different
Yeah, it was
from
very different.
your first. So Thank you so much. Before we go, what do you think about the current state of postpartum care and what needs to change? I don't know why I finished on this question. Producer Rach should be the start of it. Because it's such a big, such a
loaded question, and I think the tide is slowly changing.
Yeah,
I think there's more and more awareness becoming available in the general population, but I still think there are a few really key players, government,
Medicare,
exactly, that need to realise the enormity of this change for people, and that it's supporting people in postpartum, it supports families in such an enormous way.
In a foundational way.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. We see lower rates of so many things with adequate support in postpartum, relationships and children's wellness and parents' wellness, and it's just massive.
The list goes on.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
No worries.
We're going to come back and talk about your second postpartum.
Excellent.
This podcast represents the opinions of our hosts and their guest speakers. Views and opinions expressed in the podcast are our own and do not represent that of our places of work. This podcast is for informational purposes only, and content here should not be taken as medical or professional advice. Please consult your healthcare professional for any personal recommendations and medical care. While we make every effort to ensure that the information we are sharing is accurate based on the best available information at the time of recording, we welcome any comments, suggestions or feedback via our website contact form, home.com.au/contact. Names and details of personal experiences may have been changed to allow for anonymity and privacy. To join the conversation, join us on social media at Home Postpartum.